People around this country, and for that matter around the world, are reacting tonight to the terrible news of the death of Robin Williams. The 63-year-old actor and comedian died of an apparent suicide.
A nationwide tragedy, suicide. A new report from the Centers for Disease Control says it is growing rapidly among teenagers. Since the year 2000, the suicide rate for teens is up 28%, with an average of 5 deaths a day.
Suicide among veterans is 22% higher than for people who never served in the military. Male veterans kill themselves at a rate 19% higher than civilian men. Female veterans die by suicide at a rate 150% higher than civilian women.
Bourdain's death comes just days after the shocking suicide of fashion designer Kate Spade, and in the same week the CDC issued a report that suicide rates have gone up 30% since 1999.
Depression and suicide are very serious issues. You never know what kind of battle someone is going through inside. Be kind to one another.
What's up, family? Welcome back to another Therapy Thursday, and as you can tell by the title of this video, it's going to be pretty heavy. So if you're not in the mood for it, go ahead and click out now, no hard feelings, but I do encourage you to stay, whether this video applies to you or not. And I've never asked anybody, never have asked you guys to like or subscribe to my channel, and that sure as hell is not going to start now. But I am going to ask you to share this video to as many people as you possibly can that you even remotely think might be suicidal. When I first started my channel and I knew that my passion was talking about mental health, I didn't know quite sure whether I was going to actually make this video or not, and talking about my experience with suicidal ideation. And in order for me to make this video, I knew that I was going to have to tell the most important person to me in my entire life, and that was my dad, because, well, he never knew. He didn't know until a few days ago. And I kept this a secret for several years. And the story that I'm about to tell you takes place about 8 years ago. And I know that after I make this video, a lot of people are going to look at me totally different, and they're probably going to judge me, and they're going to think, man, maybe there's something wrong with this girl. But that's why I'm making this video, because I want to get away from that thought process. And see, that's the interesting thing about mental illness and suicide in particular, is people think that somebody has to look a certain way or fit a certain profile in order to be suicidal. There was this one guy, and he meant absolutely no harm by it, but when I was making a video on low self-esteem way back then, commented, and he said, it's interesting that you can make a video talking about this when you look like that. And so that should just go to show you that when people, you know, who are famous or who are gorgeous or who, for all intents and purposes, have everything going for them and they kill themselves, people are more shocked by those deaths than they are by those who, I guess, you would expect to be. My point is that suicide is not biased in who it targets. Mental illness is not biased in who it affects. And the reason for suicide, while it is contributed to a mental illness, there are so many causes of suicide that have nothing to do with the mental illness at all. For an example, maybe you're having a hard time coming to terms with your sexual orientation. Maybe you're getting bullied incessantly at school. Or you have an extremely demanding job that's incredibly stressful. Maybe you don't like the way you look. Maybe you're suffering from low self-esteem. These are not mental illnesses, but people kill themselves over it all the time. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, suicide in America is the 10th leading cause of death. And it's the second leading cause of death for those who have ages between 11 and 35. And that of those reported deaths that were ruled as a suicide, only 25% of them had known health mental issues documented in their records. That means that, for one, we probably have a several amount of suicides that cannot be ruled as a suicide because of uncertainty. And the second is those that were ruled as a suicide didn't seek help from anybody, didn't tell anybody. They had no known mental health issues in their medical records whatsoever. They suffered alone in silence. And they suffer alone in silence just like I did because it's too embarrassing to go forward. Saying that you were once suicidal, that you once thought about killing yourself, that you've once thought just about ending your life. Man, the stigma around that is still extremely strong to this day. We might say, hey, we're feeling sad, or we're feeling depressed today, or we're feeling anxiety. But if they're having suicidal thoughts like I was, that's the one part that you do leave out. That's the one part that you don't say. Suicide rates are on the rise by 30% in the United States. There's two different forms of suicidal ideation in which most people don't even know the difference between the two or know what they are. One's passive and one is active. And it usually starts out with passive and takes a sharp left turn into active not too much longer. Passive is where you are thinking that someone or something inadvertently will cause you harm or cause you death. And when you think of these thoughts, you have some form of relief. Eventually that leads to active, where you are now thinking about inflicting self-harm. Because people don't know the difference between the two, they think that when they're having passive suicidal ideation, that it's not life-threatening, that it's not serious, and they don't seek help. And that's what I want to stop. That's exactly what happened to me. It wasn't a long time until I was passive in my thoughts that eventually turned into active. And I didn't seek help, and I hid it from everybody because I was too afraid of the backlash that A, society gives, and B, from my employment. I was too afraid of risking everybody knowing what was going on with me and losing my position. So I suffered alone in silence. There are people in society, they make comments like, I don't feel bad for them at all because they could have gotten help. And they're incredibly selfish, and they just hurt all those people that they left behind. And they villainize these people rather than recognizing that they're victims themselves and that they went through an extremely hard time. And the only thing that they could see and feel was their pain, and they just tapped out. They tapped out rather than getting the help that they needed because they were too afraid of facing society that thinks just like that. Actually, my thoughts of suicide became too consistent and entirely too heavy for me to deal with. I just decided to call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. I mean, you hear about it all the time, and you just wonder, I'm gonna pull over while I talk about this. You just wonder if they're really there to help you. You wonder if they're gonna call the cops. You wonder, like, what will happen if you actually do call this hotline. And I can tell you that without a doubt, you can call this hotline. They will help you. I'll never forget that day. And I'll never forget the name of the woman that I talked to. I talked to her for like 3 hours, and I just told her everything that I couldn't tell anybody. I would be lying if I said that Susan, that was the name of the lady, I'd be lying if I said that Susan didn't play some form of inspiration for this channel, right? Because she was the first line of defense for me in getting help. Ultimately, I guess, say that in many ways, she saved my life that day. When you're in that much pain, you just can't see a way out. You just have no hope. It's just relentless. It's like this horrible dark cloud that just you wake up with every day and you go to sleep with every day. And you might have some good days, but majority of the time, they're horrible. And you just want relief. Like, that's all that you want. She didn't give me any, like, life-changing advice that day. It was just the simple fact that I could spew all of this out. And which is why so many people have hit me up, because they just need to talk to somebody who's like a Susan. They just need to tell somebody. And then usually after our conversations, they're like, I just feel so much better now. She did really encouraged me to go get help. She was completely right. I went and got help, and together, me and my therapist found holistic remedies for me to help get rid of these thoughts and for me to overall just become more healthy and happy mentally. And I started working out, and I changed my diet, and I started reading more self-help books and reaching out on forums, just being able to communicate with people who are also sufferers as well. And that helped immensely because it made me feel like I wasn't alone. And one of the biggest tips that I can tell you if you're going through what I'm going through is get out of whatever situation is causing you to feel this way. If you're getting bullied at school, change schools. If you hate your job, quit it. It's not worth it. I'm telling you, I know from experience, it's not worth it. You know, if you're in a toxic relationship, you gotta get out. If you're addicted to alcohol or to a drug, get help, get treatment. Get whatever help you need to stop this. And maybe none of these things are going on in your life and you still feel sad. Please go to a psychiatrist. It's totally okay. It's okay to talk about these things. This shouldn't be taboo anymore to talk about. And it shouldn't be taboo to talk about getting help and wanting to save your own life. There's nothing wrong with that. People think that suicide rates are higher in adults than they are in kids, and that's the exact opposite. In fact, most people think that depression affects more adults than it does adolescents. And again, that's incorrect. Our youth is being heavily impacted with depression and thoughts of suicide because of I think social media. Our world now lives in a fishbowl. Everybody knows what everybody does because of social media. Popularity is so important now in our society. I don't know why, but it is. And these are all causing factors. And I really think, and I want you guys to think about this too. Everybody knows I'm going to Hawaii. Everybody now knows that I love my job. And everybody now knows that I'm just relatively overall happy in my life. And if I would have carried through with an act that is irreversible 8 years ago, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I wouldn't be with you. So think about that. Hold out. There's hope. Whatever your current situation is, it's not going to last forever. It's not. And I know it feels like that, but I promise you there is hope. There's a way out, and things will change. I mean, look how beautiful this is. Our world in general is gorgeous, and you have a right to be here. Everybody does. Don't take that away from yourself. And what I was going through is no longer. Those problems, those issues that haunted me, I dealt with them, and they're gone. They're gone. You can recover. The other biggest piece of advice that I can tell you is don't shut your family out. Tell somebody what you're thinking. Tell somebody your struggles. Even if you're not having suicidal thoughts, but you're extremely depressed, tell your family. Tell your closest friends so they can support you. That was the biggest thing that my father wanted me to tell you. He felt so guilty that he didn't know what was going on with me. Don't be afraid of letting people down. I mean, I'm sure that's why Robin Williams didn't seek help. I'm sure that's finally why he just said, I can't do this anymore. He battled with depression for years, and he didn't want any of his fans or anybody to know what he was going through because he didn't want to let them down. He wanted to continue to be the loving, funny guy that children and adults around the world absolutely just adored. And that was a lot of pressure for him, I'm sure. And that's exactly why I didn't tell my family or my dad, because I aspire to be just like him. I'm not going to go to my mentor and say, hey, Dad, the person that I idolize the most, which is you, I can't hack it. I can't make it. You know, I can't be as good as you. So, you know, but that's all just in here. It's not real. Those aren't real thoughts. Give yourself a fighting chance. I beg of you, please, just reach out to somebody. You owe yourself that much before making an irreversible decision. We can work this out. We can do this together. Our world can do this together, and you can do this for yourself. Man. When there's a will, there's a way. And when you reach out to somebody, that means you have some form of will. The last thing I'm going to say is pay attention. Parents, friends, family, pay attention to the subtle changes in your loved one's life. If they're gaining too much weight, if they change, if they were once outgoing and then all of a sudden they become extremely introverted, if they used to get really great grades and now they're failing classes, or if they used to enjoy certain hobbies that they no longer like to do. Another big one is social media. If they're typing up things or if they're making statements that are otherwise kind of odd, that make you think longer than 2 seconds about them, they are in their own way reaching out for help. They just don't want to come out and say, save me. They're just waiting for somebody to do it. That's their way of saying, help me. Somebody just notice. I want you to live. So I'm here. Don't quit on yourself. Don't quit on me. Don't quit on this world. I promise you we can find a way. Me, you, or somebody else. I can direct you to somebody. But we can help. There's help. I made it through, and so can you. You're talking to a survivor. You're talking to somebody who, just by one simple phone call to a total stranger, completely changed my path of quitting or surviving. And that's all that I want you to do, is just give yourself that one last chance before you say goodbye. I hope to see you again next time. Until then, I love and care for you immensely. I'm out.